Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Empower Her podcast. Is it possible to make the wrong career decision? Okay, so this question has come up so many times for my clients and for myself as well. People have felt scared, and I've heard this so often that people feel scared making the wrong career decision or making a career change, switching companies. And I just want you to know right off the bat that this fear is normal. I get asked all the time from my clients. I work with a lot of career coaching clients. Is this role aligned? Does this fit my skill set? Are you sure this is right for me? And I always tell them at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if I think the role is aligned, if I think this is an aligned career path. You need to see and you need to understand if this is aligned. So, I work with a lot of women. I work with neurodivergent individuals, high achievers, and it's unfortunately par for the course is second guessing themselves in their career decisions. And the reason that we do this is because it's built into the way we were raised. We were raised to question everything, to overthink and overanalyze, and actually question ourselves more so, not question everything, but question ourselves. We were meant to, they taught us to overthink and overanalyze, and we aren't taught to use our intuition. We're taught to use logic. Often fear comes up, and logic and fear can sound the same. And intuition and fear can sound the same. And when we talk about things like internalized capitalism, reward safe paths, right? That's all totally true, but it's often hard for us to distinguish what's the difference between being logical and intuitive about our career path and then having fear, right? It's really hard to differentiate those two things sometimes. So rather, it's more important to look at what others are doing and base our decisions on that, is what we are taught, quote unquote. It's what is everyone else doing? How is everyone else living their life? That's how I should be doing things, right? And I've had a lot of fear about this in my life as well. Most of you know I was in corporate for nearly 7 years. I moved up the ladder. I had 4 or 5 promotions in that time frame, which is pretty good. I had a very clear path in marketing, in management. I could have, stayed my course, switched companies, but within the same realm, even potentially moved up in the same company, although I was pretty high up. And I ended up quitting and I started my own coaching business. And it took me about a year to make that decision. I was struggling with the decision of what to do for about 6 months to a year. I was talking it out with people. I was analyzing the to-do list, doing the math, doing all the things okay, is this something that's going to be right for me? And it was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. And I second guessed myself many times. I was like, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be up for this? Am I good enough to start my own business? Doing freelance on the side. Am I going to have enough clients? It was stressful all the time. But here's the thing. And this is what I kept trying to tell myself to calm myself down is I can always go back if I need to. I can always go back to corporate. I can always go back to a full-time job. I'm not saying I could start tomorrow, but if I wanted to, I could start putting my resume out there. I could start, reaching out to my contacts, the people that I know, I could do that. But at least I can say that I tried, right? Worst case scenario, at least I can say that I tried. I started my own business, something that I wanted to do. I did the freelance. At least I can say that it was something that I tried. And here's how we can kind of tell if something is actually in alignment with us or if it's really not, because I think that's what it comes down to. When you imagine this thing happening, right? When I imagined starting my own business, I felt relief. So do you feel relief when you think about letting go or doing the thing that you want to do, right? The next thing is really understanding is where does the fear come from? Is it fear that it's actually something that's dangerous? I won't have any money, I won't have a place to live, this decision's going to physically harm me? Or is the fear rooted in judgment? Because those two things aren't the same, right? Because if a decision is going to harm me physically, emotionally, then yes, we need to rethink it. But if it's just judgment coming from myself, then that's not really fear, right? That's judgment. I had money saved up. I already had a part-time coaching gig lined up. I obviously had a roof over my head. There was no danger to my physical environment. I was able to buy myself food. So for me, making that leap to having my own business the fear wasn't coming from a place of danger. It was coming from a place of judgment. And I think another thing to think about is like, if you feel pulled to something and you can't explain why, there's a reason for that, right? Like I had always said, and like I'm a big manifester, and I had always said from like probably my teenage years, I always told my parents like, I'm never going to work corporate. I'm going to have my own business, my own job. My dad had his own business, still does. And so that's what I saw. Like neither of my parents worked in corporate. They did like when I was little, but my memory of them was that my dad had his own business. And so I had always told my parents, like, I'm not going to, work in corporate. I'm going to have my own business. And it was something that I always felt I wanted to do. It was something that I always felt that I needed to do, that I was pulled towards, and I couldn't explain why. So if you have something that you're like, oh, I'm feeling pulled towards it and I can't explain it, I'm feeling, I'm obsessing over it, I'm thinking about it, it comes up over and over and over again, it may be a sign that that's something that could be really good for you. And again, we can like flesh out the details, but still that's something to kind of look at. And another thing to kind of think about is if you've outgrown your identity, then that's a sign that maybe you need to make a change, right? So I personally at corporate wasn't feeling good anymore. I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt out of place. I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing. I loved my team and I loved the people I worked with, but just like the day to day and sort of my task, I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And I felt uncomfortable. And I realized now looking back is that I had outgrown that identity. And sort of a reframe for this, or how to think about it, is when we think about alignment isn't going to be loud, right? Fear, judgment is often extremely loud, but alignment is often quiet. It feels grounded. It feels like the truth, even when it's scary, right? We talk about this sort of like intuition as well. Intuition is not going to be loud and yelling at you, right? Intuition is quiet. It's stable. It feels grounded versus like the fear is going to be very loud. So how do we determine, we just discussed when it's alignment. What about signs that it's actually you're avoiding something and you're trying to figure something out? So avoidance can come up when you're sort of bouncing from idea to idea, hoping something will click, right? Or if you're afraid to be seen trying and failing, or you're, avoiding the hard conversations and being honest, or your body feels disconnected, tight, and panicked, right? These are all signs that you're avoiding something that may actually help you in the long run. So sometimes avoidance, or like being avoidant, is a mask for waiting for clarity. But what you're really waiting for isn't clarity most of the time. You're usually avoiding something because of the judgment, because you're waiting for permission to do the thing. But you need to give yourself permission to do the thing. But being in the avoidant state and not being able to move forward with the decision can be really challenging. So let's talk about kind of what you can do to get out of that state. So the first thing we want to do, and I will drill this home in every single podcast, but you need to regulate yourself, okay? If you're in survival mode, if your nervous system is dysregulated, if you're stressed about money, about anything, you will not be able to make decisions from a place of logic, clarity, and intuition. You just won't, because your body will say, that's not a priority. My priority is trying to be safe. My priority is trying to, figure out this situation. And it won't be going to that logical place of like, okay, what could I do next? Or what opportunities are there? I think journaling is a really great way to kind of write out your feelings and see what's there. So a journal prompt you could do is, if no one was watching me, what would I do next? Sort of like a similar journal prompt of like, if I lived in a bubble, what would I do? But like, if no one was watching me, because I think the fear of judgment often comes up. People are watching us. They're seeing what we're doing. We're afraid, right? Like I was afraid. I was like, I'm going to start my business. What are they going to think of me? They're going to see me posting on social media. They're going to, think I'm a loser. They're going to think I'm, trying to put myself out there. They're going to pick up my videos. They're going to talk about how I look, all the things. And I was so scared all the time about what other people would say. If I knew no one was watching me, I would post. Who cares, right? I'd be like, That's great. So the journal prompt is, if no one was watching me, what would I do next? And then ask yourself, am I saying no to this thing because it isn't right or because I'm afraid of being seen? Okay. A lot of times, again, it's the fear of being seen. Okay. So that's really important. And again, I don't want to disregard the fact that like it is important to feel safe, right? Like make sure you're financially prepped, have someone you can work with, a mentor or coach, have flexible steps, create those goals. Like that's super important. But I think just as like a baseline of whether or not you should even try to pursue this, it's good to understand, okay, am I avoiding this situation? And if I am, how can I get out of that state? Because that's really important. And I want to go back to kind of this first question that I asked at the beginning of the podcast, which was like, am I making the wrong career decision? And at the end of the day, and this is what I tell my clients and what I think is most important, is there is no perfect decision. And with that, there is no wrong decision either. You just have to decide, what is it that's going to help me right now? What is it that feels most aligned right now? What do I feel like is going to be the best for me in this moment? And what are you willing to commit to? And it's okay in the meantime, when you're making this transition, to sort of grieve that old identity of yourself. And you can still grieve and be excited, right? Like I remember when I had my last day in corporate, like I cried. Like I left, I was sad. I went home and cried. I had like, a couple week grieving period of like losing this thing that I was so attached to. Corporate and work was like my identity. My team was my identity. I did everything for them. And I was super excited for this next chapter, super excited to kind of be quote unquote free. That's how I felt. But I also was grieving, and it's okay to feel those two things at the same time. And you also, when you're making these decisions, you don't have to be fearless either, right? I think there's this misconception that like you have to be 1000% confident to make a decision. You have to know all the steps. You have to have everything in order. Like that's not the case. I didn't have everything in order when I started my business. A lot of things I had to do on the go because I didn't know what I wanted or how I wanted it to look. I've made so many iterations in the last 2.5 years that I couldn't have anticipated back then. And it's okay to adapt. It's about asking for support, trusting yourself, and showing up for yourself regardless of the fear that's coming up, and really working on regulating your nervous system, right? So going back to this sort of career question, when I talk about this with my clients and they're asking me like, okay, is this the right career decision? I'm like, do you feel this is aligned? Does this support what you're looking for next? Is this in line with where you want to be in 2 years from now, right? Like we look at it from all different perspectives, from a holistic perspective, and then we can determine if it's the right decision. And if they decide a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, they want to be in a different job, a different industry, do something different, there's no reason why they can't pivot. That's the thing, is like, just because at 30 years old you're deciding, okay, I'm going to pursue marketing or I'm going to pursue HR, whatever it is, that doesn't mean that you have to do that for the rest of your life. I think we get stuck in making these decisions because we think they're going to be decisions for the long run. It's just a decision for right now. It's a decision that's best for you in the moment, with the information you have right now, with all of the surroundings and the feelings and the intuition you have right now. And again, things can always change. And I think that's what we need to leave room for, is that change, and being open to the change and understanding that things can change, and that a decision you make now doesn't need to be a lifelong decision. So I would just encourage you, if you're making a career decision or any decision in life, just really try to understand, like, is this aligned with me? If it's aligned with you, are you avoiding it? What can you do to get out of the avoidance state? I gave examples today. And then can you let go of the fear of that decision for the long run? Can you just focus on the right now and just the next step in front of you, the next thing you need to do, versus 20 years down the line? Because who knows where you'll be in even a year? Who knows? But it's about doing what's right for you in the moment and doing what's best for you right now. So I think a good journal prompt maybe to end on is one that you can sort of do that will really help you sort of understand, even if it's not about career, but it's about anything, to sort of see where any fear is underlying so you can start to make changes. So the journal prompt is, what have I been calling confusion? That's really just fear. And this can relate to anything in life. And this will show you like what's been feeling confusing lately, but is it really just fear, right? Whether it's, breaking up with a significant other, whether it's setting a boundary, whether it's changing jobs, like whatever it is, What are you saying you're confused about, but really it's just fear? And then how can we get out of that? And if you need help with this, I have one-to-one coaching slots open. So please DM me or email me and let me know. Everything will be in the show notes. And I would really, really appreciate if you rated and reviewed the podcast. It really, really helps promote it. I hope y'all liked this episode. I love talking about career things as well. Of course, let me know in the DMs if there's any topics you want me to cover on the podcast. I hope y'all have an amazing week. Sending you so many good vibes, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.